Welcome to Esoterica, the podcast. I'm Chris Schultz.
I'm Aaron Christian.
And we are here today with the Amazing Webb Wilder. How are you today, Webb?
Pretty good, guys. Thanks for the amazing part. I'm okay. It's a weird time for everybody, but glad to be here with y'all.
We're glad to have you.
Appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend with two small-time podcasters.
Kind of got a lot of time lately.
Yeah, we do.
Well, on that point, we usually the first question we ask anybody that comes on our show is, so how's the current pandemic impacting your life?
Well, in negative ways, but in positive ways, and I almost feel guilty about the positives, because I've enjoyed a lot of the being at home and playing the guitars that I thought I would play one day and never did, and having breakfast on the deck and things like that. But it's weird, and of course, I was launching a new album when all my gigs got canceled, and I've done some on the internet from home. That's been fun too, and that's been kind of a growth thing because it's a whole new, web TV kind of thing. I miss a lot of mundane things that I always took for granted, like just get together, maybe one-on-one with a friend or having lunch or something. So I think, the usual stuff. I'm frustrated that my gigs are, live touring for everyone is a non-option pretty much, and that I can't go to lunch with friends or whatever. But I've kind of enjoyed some of it, to tell you the truth.
I certainly feel the same way. I've enjoyed certain parts of it. I'm not really looking forward to too much of the world going back to normal. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like we always have a hard time complaining because we're both out of work right now. But at the same time, we launched this Famous Folks things, and we've gotten to talk to a lot of celebrities. So, that's not a terrible thing to have come out of all of this.
The whole virtual world has grown by leaps and bounds, and what people are getting used to putting out there as the hosts of things or as the recipients of things, everybody's learning curves. It's a learning curveball world is my theory. There's a learning curve every day, but it's cool.
We muddle through it. So the album you chose, and for anybody that's tuning in for the first time, usually what we do is we pick an album and we discuss our thoughts on it. So at one point, Aaron and I thought it would be much more interesting for our listeners to hear from famous folks as opposed to our own thoughts. So when we reached out to you, the album you chose is Maskman and The Agents, One Eyed Open.
Yep.
Can you tell us, I most importantly want to know about your relationship with this album, but
here it is.
I went to look it up. I could find almost nothing about this band.
Yeah, I was relieved when we found some things on YouTube because I didn't know, what was going to be a deal breaker on doing this. I just knew that I had 2 copies of the vinyl, and that's the way it looks on the back. How about that,
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So here's what I know about it. The phrase "my dear friend" has become a real cliche that people use, and sometimes though it's perfect. So in describing my dear friend Casper Rawls, it's apt. We've been very close for decades, and he's a great guitar player and an artist in his own right. And he's from Texas, and he still lives there. And I lived there in the 70s, and he found I have 2 of these. He found the first one and just thought I'd like to have it years ago and bought it and gave it to me. And so I thought, well, man, if it's half as good as the cover, you've got this guy that's dressed sort of like what he was, I guess, an R&B artist in the 60s there was a company called Eleganza that advertised these type of threads in the back of Hit Parader magazines and stuff like that. Well, he's decked out that way, except he's got a mask like the Lone Ranger, right? Mm-hmm. And these are all novelty songs. So there was a novelty R&B act that their material was blue, if you know what I mean, in nature, called Doug Clark and the Hot Nuts in the 60s. But none of this is off color or blue at all. This is just funny stuff. So they were novelty R&B. This is novelty R&B for the most part. Mm-hmm. And, he had these backup guys, the agents, who are kind of like James Brown's Famous Flames, and his real name was Harmon Bethea. He worked out of the DC area. It's on the Dynamo record label. And there was a woman that's mentioned in the liner notes. oh gosh, what's her? Oh, Lillian N. Claiborne. So maybe she was the producer or the label owner. But I mean, there are these things on here, like there's a song called Wigs about wigs. There's a song on here called Roaches about roaches. And there's a song called The World is a Cafeteria. It's some of the greatest stuff ever.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the only information I found out on Harmon was it looks like for his entire career, he was an Army Department mail clerk, and he kept that day job and had been trying for years and years and years to break into the music industry, not having much luck until he hit it with this sort of novelty approach.
Yeah. Well, you know, Eddie Murphy has made this movie that I've yet to see. It's on Netflix about Rudy Ray Moore, the comedian, who was the similar story in comedy and in film. You know, and he definitely worked blue. That's the difference there. But unfortunately, he attained some fame, and now there's a movie about him, whereas that's not the case with the Masked Man. But who knows now? You know, I had always kind of held this close to the vest because I always wondered if I wanted to cover some of these songs myself, right? And who knows? Maybe I will one day. But yeah, but I can relate to the flourishing and obscurity aspect of his story too. You did me perhaps too proud putting me in the category of famous people. I always say I'm loved by dozens.
Loved by dozens, but hey, that's more than some, so that's a good thing.
Well, one positive of this whole pandemic thing is I always had the theory that there were 11 Webb Wilder fans in every town in the world, you know, and you have the potential of reaching them doing these internet shows, you know, like I've done these things in my basement and put them on the internet, and, you know, people will be watching in Australia and Europe, and, you know, can't hit them all at once like that going to some bar somewhere, but some bar somewhere is where rock and roll really happens, I think, too. So, you know.
Yeah. I would imagine being used to being out on the road, it's going to be a itchy feet.
Kind of, you know, but I mean, I've been doing it so long, you know, and I'm not exactly touring in luxury. I mean, I think one way, you know, the legends are able to do it so long is they have people taking a lot of care of them, and they're in a tour bus or a jet or whatever, you know. We've always been out there slugging it out, moving our own gear and everything. So, you know, I don't enjoy that so much, but I do miss hanging out with the guys and interacting with the fans and playing the blues and playing original material and doing a solo and band gigs. And so all I've really done on the internet from my home since this happened are solo gigs. But we may you know, with the social distancing and all that, we haven't figured out quite how to get together with the guys, but we may soon. Got to have another rabbit to pull out of the hat, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, your touring experience doesn't sound too dissimilar to when I was in a high school band and we tried to do touring, and we're sleeping in Walmart parking lots and bringing our own gear. But, you know, you're probably a little bit further along the way.
Well, you get a level above that where you're like all in one room. And then you get a level above that where you occasionally have your own room, but you're usually doubling with people. And we never really have gotten past that. But, you know, there were times when I was on a tour bus, when I had major label tour support and things like that. And, you know, I've played in Europe and all over the United States and even in Fiji and all kind of stuff. But, you know, it's a great thing. I mean, I love performing. So they always say, you know, I'll do the gig for free. You got to pay me for getting there and back. And that's
so back onto the album for a second here. Do you have a favorite track on this album?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a favorite track on this album?
Do I have a favorite track? God, that's tough because as I was saying, you know, well, let's see. Okay, well, my top, I'll have to just, there's at least half the album that's absolutely great. It's really kind of a toss up between Wigs and Roaches, man. Those were both so great.
Yeah, I was listening to Roaches just shortly before we started, and he's even got some commentary on the civil rights movement thrown into there.
Yeah, one of the guys, one of the agents says, Wallace heard about that, you know, and because he says something, the masked man says something like you're talking about it, and then you know, one of the backup singers says, Wallace heard about that, question mark. George Wallace he's talking about, right?
Mhm.
Who was an obstacle to civil rights, let's face it.
Oh, absolutely.
So you mentioned how this album kind of came into your life. Would you say you have a personal relationship with this album? Like, how does this, other than being sort of in the same vein, what connects you spiritually, I guess, with this album?
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you were ever to really hear this album, there are elements of a lot of the other things that enjoyed greater acclaim that were happening in, particularly in R&B at the time. So, I mean, you'll be listening to him and you go, oh, that's a little bit Joe Tex, or that's a little bit James Brown, that's a little bit Wilson Pickett, that's a little bit Doug Clark and the Hot Nuts, or whatever. So I like all those things, you know. So I like this, and just the sheer authenticity, individual thing of it, you know. It's really not like anything else, and it's certainly earthy and genuine. So and it was just mystical how it came to me. Casper found the record and gave it to me, and we were in a band together at one time called the Drapes, and we actually played one of the other really good songs from this album called "It's the Thing." And man, I don't know, it's just as I'm fond of saying of things that count, it stands in its own light.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And it's definitely, you can definitely hear that the genuineness in it. Yeah. when you're listening to it. These guys are having fun. It meant something to them.
They're having fun. Yeah, it's in a lighthearted vein. It doesn't take on one hand, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but on the other hand, it's like lay it out there. There it is, you know. They don't make any apologies for it or anything. So it's not one of these things like a guy who laughs at his own jokes. Mm-hmm. Mm. We have a friend who does that, and another friend of mine pointed it out to me one day. I'm like, oh yeah, there's deeper meaning there about this guy, you know.
I'm that friend. Okay. Anyway.
Well, you know, there are probably a lot of great people who laugh at their own jokes, but maybe not this guy. So yeah.
Sometimes it's just a situation where somebody has to laugh.
Right.
So I know it's kind of hard to pin down where we're still in the middle of this pandemic. Like I was on your site earlier, and I noticed you got cancellations all this month now at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And what happens, you know, is that, you know, the agents are all scratched. My agent is totally cautious and on the side of respecting the virus, you know, and all the venue people have been pretty much too. And we're all in trouble. I mean, you know, it's like these precious venues are endangered, and all our livelihoods are endangered. And for those of us who are getting older, you know, you got to wonder, like, how old will you be when this thing, you know, straightens out? Like the Stones, for instance. Okay, the Stones are very old and they're super big in the entertainment world. So the only way they can really do a truly live with an audience show is a super big show. So, you know, by the time a super big rock concert can happen, these guys, who knows if they'll even all be alive, you know? So it's just wild, you know? But so one thing that's happened is that canceled, and you sort of have to guess, like, well, when do you think you could do it again? And we were projecting them, rescheduling them for the fall, and then that sort of didn't look so good, and a lot of them are getting rescheduled for the first of the year. And I wonder about those, even because, you know, it's really cold in flu season in like January or something, and how that, you know, correlates with this virus, I don't know. But I mean, some people are really thinking, you know, summer of 2021 is the time to,
where it's all,
you know, like in Americana. You know, I do a weekly Americana chart radio show, which we can talk about. But two of the biggest artists in that genre are Jason Isbell and Lucinda Williams. Well, they're talking about, and Jason just put out a new album, and Lucinda did too, and they're talking about touring together realistically in the summer of 2021.
Wow. And like you mentioned earlier, you just had your new album, Night Without Love, it just come out just prior to the whole world shutting down.
Yeah, the last gig I played was March 7th, and it was at this historically significant, cool, old tavern was a solo gig, you know, in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is east of here. And we had just had that terrible tornado. And the next gigs I was going to do were benefits for Nashville tornado victims. And as I was driving over to Knoxville and back, I saw some of, you know, because it really just kind of hit Nashville and went Interstate 40 east through the state, you know, and I saw a lot of that destruction. And that was March 7th, which strangely enough was my mother's birthday. You know, I was coming back expecting to do these benefits, and they began to get canceled.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so the album was to come out April 10th. And, you know, we have a really cool, important part of the scene, record store here called Grimey's. So significant that when they had to shut down, Taylor Swift stepped in to pay their employees' salaries for a few months. We were going to do an in-store there, which is, you know, a privileged, high-profile-ish thing to do the day the album was to be released, which was April 10th. And, of course, that didn't happen, and I wound up in my basement going out on the internet with just me and my guitar, you know.
Hey, so any idea what's next for you? Other than, and I mean, hopefully touring before summer of 2021, but any new projects in the work or?
Well, you know, one thing I learned getting in show business is that you're always supposed to have something to say, like, especially to your fellow artists, like, hey, what you got going on, man? You're always supposed to, well, you know, Eric called me and he wants me to be on the next Crossroads Festival. No, so that's not happening. What I can tell you is there's a music video in the works for the title cut of the new album, which is called Night Without Love. And there's a song called Night Without Love. There's a music video in the works for that. And that'll I'm excited about that. That'll be cool. I'll do some more of these cyber shows, as I call them, you know, live streaming shows. And my bass player and I may socially distance and do one as a duo. I don't know. That's not official, but you know, all that information will be promoted on webwilder.com and the Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And what else? I do a weekly, as I mentioned, radio show called The List, and it's an Americana chart show. And the album is on the Americana chart currently, which is great. And that goes out on WMOT.org. So, and I'm trying to write songs, and just today, you know, I've always done albums that were a combination of cover and original material. And the covers are really more truly interpretations, you know. I think I'm pretty good at that, actually. And some people I really respect do it. Like, you know, some people write all their own songs and you don't like any of them, you know. It's like, if you make sure you do some of someone else's, you have a really good chance of getting some good ones on there. And the Beatles did that. Nobody's going to outwrite Lennon and McCartney. Nick Lowe, who many consider the greatest living British songwriter, he finds some groovy covers to do. So I was making a list today of songs that I've either written or have in motion, and some covers I might like to do. And this will, if I ever get to make another album, I'm 90% sure that this won't be the songs, because that's the way it evolves every time. These won't be the songs, but and I'll write on a song for years, literally. And I made a little headway on one of those. So I mean, it's low key. It's stuff like that, like sitting in a chair, playing the guitar, watching the news, doing my radio show, doing things like this. Thank God the album has some life, and there are some promo avenues to explore. And it's the waiting game in many ways, you know.
Yep.
So what's one change in the way that the world works do you like to see come out of this entire pandemic experience?
Well, let's see, the way the world works. Well, we've seen changes all along the way, right? And, you know, the music business has evolved from, you know, the sale of sheet music to recorded music, and then the different mediums, you know. When I was in high school, it was vinyl and 8-tracks, you know, and then vinyl and cassettes. And when I first started making records, it was vinyl and cassettes. And then somewhere along the way, CDs came out, and vinyl was really down there, and then downloading came out, and then the free illegal downloading really gutted a lot of royalty-based income for a lot of people. I never had that much of it to begin with, but suddenly everybody's got to play live and sell merchandise to make money in the music business. So you're competing. At that time, B.B. King was still alive. You're competing with everybody from B.B. King to a young Taylor Swift, and then it became a buyer's market. And then that is pretty much the status of things till this pandemic happened. And now the royalty-based income is not much better for anybody. The only thing that happened in the interim, of course, was vinyl sales started going back up to some degree or another. And they're chasing the streaming income more, but it's minuscule money, and so now, it's people are worried, there's a movement called Save Our Stages, so that the venues themselves can exist when and if this is all over. It's anybody's guess, but musicians will make music one way or another. I still feel compelled to do so. I didn't exactly get in it for the money, which is good, because I'd be really disappointed if that had been my motivation.
Awesome. Well, Webb, thank you very much for taking time today to come chat with us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for introducing. One of our selfish reasons for doing this podcast is to get into new music. So thank you for your suggestion. I actually enjoyed listening to Maskman, and will continue to do so.
Well, I'm glad. And you told me something I didn't know. I didn't know that he was an Army, did you say shipping clerk or something?
I think it was mail clerk. Army Department mail clerk for all those years.
Maybe that helped him with his organizational skills to make this other side hustle happen,
All right. So thank you again. When your episode comes out, we'll link to your site and to your radio show, so people can check you out.
Thanks so much.
And take care. Hopefully, we'll see you on the road sometime down the road.
That would be fantastic. We look forward to that.
Awesome.